The Atlanta Falcons pull off a big-time win over the Buffalo Bills, and it looks like Buffalo might be in trouble. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso, with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Spencer German. The Ohio boys are back, folks. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about the team that I cover on a daily basis being the first team to fire their head coach this NFL season, with Brian Callahan being shown the door. Then we got to talk about a Monday night doubleheader that had two great matchups. The Bears get their revenge on the Washington Commanders in D.C., and the Buffalo Bills look like they are in trouble after a loss to the explosive Atlanta Falcons. Before we dive into all of it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen. Reminder, you can follow our show and hear new episodes ad-free daily on Amazon Music, so go check that out. And thank you for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. But Spencer, we start with a big-time win for the Atlanta Falcons at home over the Buffalo Bills, 24-14. And look, I want to give the Atlanta Falcons their credit here, but at the end of the day, to me, the big story is the ineptitude of the Buffalo Bills. After losing to the New England Patriots, then they lose back-to-back games here. They're headed into their bye, and we could talk about Josh Allen, the turnovers, this and that. They made Josh Allen look like the old Josh Allen in this game. But I'm much more concerned about that Buffalo Bills defense. And at the end of the day, you're led by Sean McDermott, who's supposed to be a defensive guy, and people are just running roughshod over. I mean, they gave up 210 rushing yards to the Atlanta Falcons in this game. I think at some point you have to expect a lot more out of this Buffalo defense if they're going to be the team that people think they can be.
Yeah, and I think Bills fans are probably rightfully frustrated. A lot of the same sort of commentary from Sean McDermott on, well, hey, we got to be better fundamentally, but then those things aren't getting fixed. And when you have a defensive-minded head coach, you know, you're sort of expecting that unit's going to be able to sort of rise above and be better and be stronger, and you're going to figure it out. But that hasn't been the case, at least through the first part of this season. I think even dating back to last year a little bit, they had some problems. And they can't generate much of a pass rush. Like you said, the run defense has been an issue. I know they have a lot of injuries that they're dealing with, but also, like, there's no guarantee. Like somebody like Matt Milano, who they obviously paid pretty handsomely to be part of a focal point of their defense in the middle sort of group there. He's always hurt, right? Yes. Can they count on these guys to come back and contribute in a meaningful way? I know they signed Joey Bosa, but that hasn't necessarily netted much in the way of production for them at this point. Like, he's kind of been absent in a lot of these games. So, yeah, I agree. Like, I don't know if it has to be like a sound the alarms type thing in Buffalo. I mean, when you have Josh Allen, he's kind of the great eraser, right? Like right. You're always going to have a chance when you have him. You know that he can make some phenomenal plays on offense and keep you in games. But I think, yeah, the defense is an issue. I will say this about the offense, though, too. I don't know. Like, Joe Brady had a bad game plan tonight. Like,
yes,
even as bad as the defense is, there was a phase in that game where in the second half, they got 3 consecutive stops of the Falcons, get them to go 3 and out, and then give it back to the offense. And then the Bills, I think, went 3 and out consecutively right after them. Like, so there's something going on there too. You know, Joe Brady, I think, is a good offensive mind. I've kind of wondered about some of the juice with him when he's kind of linked to the greatest offensive team in college football history. Like, he had the luxury of coaching what was one of the best teams ever. But I think last year you saw a guy that could do some creative things and make the offense work. But, man, like, there's key moments where James Cook wasn't on the field, Josh Allen kind of reverting back to the old Josh Allen, and yet 2 losses in a row, it is reason for concern. I think last week you probably looked and felt, okay, you know, it's New England. You're going to lose some of those division games sometimes. There's the Stephon Diggs factor there where he was really amped up for that one. It happens, but 2 in a row to go into your bye week is a pretty rough way to sort of end this opening stretch of the schedule for them.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we're not the only ones who are concerned. My guy Joe Marino from Locked On Bills showed some concern after the game as well.
The Buffalo Bills fall to the Atlanta Falcons 24-14 on Monday Night Football and enter the bye on a 2-game losing streak. This Bills team, there are a lot of questions about it. A team that many believe could be the AFC representative in the Super Bowl. Well, the Bills do not look like that type of team right now. They have so much to prove. Questions about the defense and the coverage and the tackling and the coaching. Offensively, the passing game looks completely unsettled. The run game has not been as consistent as it needs to be over the last couple of weeks. What is this team's formula? When they play their best football, what does it look like? Can they play their best football? This team has some soul searching to do during their bye.
One of the things that I'll continue to bring up with the Bills that leaves me, I guess, uneasy about them going forward is the exact opposite of what we saw with the Falcons. They don't have the big-time stars on offense to make big-time plays. Keon Coleman never has developed into the wide receiver that they expected him to be, while on the other side, and I know that Keon Coleman wasn't drafted as high as Drake London, but remember, the Bills traded out of the spot that gave Xavier Worthy to the Kansas City Chiefs, and Xavier Worthy is certainly a better player than Keon Coleman. And then you look, Drake London, 10 catches, 158 yards and a tutty. Bijan Robinson, over 230 total yards and a touchdown. Like, the Falcons have big-time offensive stars that make big plays in big moments, and the Bills simply don't. So that, I don't know if the Falcons, the defense is coming around. I don't know if you can trust them. They have a Jekyll and Hyde quality to them where I can't really look at the Falcons and say, I can say great win, but I don't know that I trust the Falcons to be a contender in the NFC. But I look at Buffalo and it's like everything that Atlanta has on offense is what the Bills don't have. And I know they did that purposefully when they got rid of Stephon Diggs. But at the end of the day, in big clutch moments, you need big clutch players and superstars to make those plays. I will always believe in that. And the Bills simply don't have it, and they put too much on Josh Allen.
Yeah, as a Bijan Robinson fantasy owner, I was very grateful for the performance tonight. I'll say that.
He was incredible.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I mean, that run down the sideline where he somehow stayed in balance.
Wow.
That's a lot of skill to be able to pull something off like that. But on the Bills side of this, I think what you're alluding to, Tyler, is kind of the flaw in the Death Star here when it comes to the Buffalo Bills, which is, you're right. They got rid of Stephon Diggs. It was too much drama. He kind of forced his way out. It was an ugly situation, the way that they kind of separated. And I understand why those things happen. Sometimes guys just run their course in certain places and you got to move on. But they haven't really done or made a concerted effort to replace the talent that was there. Yes, they re-signed James Cook, who I do think is probably one of the better backs in this league just overall, but they're also not using him effectively right now, and that's an issue in its own right. But yeah, you look around Josh Allen, and it's who is he throwing to? And I know Keon Coleman. I think Keon Coleman's a pretty good receiver. I actually liked him in terms, I going back to fantasy. From fantasy purposes, I know he had a really good camp, and I was kind of I like Keon Coleman. I think he might have a good year this year, but I think you're seeing some of the shortcomings that he has in his game. He's not a guy that's getting a lot of separation. I think his route tree is kind of limited at this point as well. And so I think what you're realizing is the Bills kind of banked on this idea that, hey, we fixed Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen got here. He was very raw, and there was a lot to kind of do there. Brian Dable played his role in kind of getting him to be the Josh Allen that won an MVP last year. And I think they were banking on this idea that, as long as we have Josh Allen, we'll be good. Doesn't matter who our receivers are. Doesn't matter what our skill positions look like. We'll be okay because Josh Allen's going to make those guys better because he's that great of a player. And I think there is some level to that, but it also helps when you have at least one guy who can sort of make those plays for you and draw some attention and help create for other players as well. And I think that what you're seeing is that Josh needs a little bit more there. I do have to wonder, especially with the bye week coming up here, and they'll have a chance to evaluate everything. And then the trade deadline is 2 weeks after that. If they will consider, trying to make a move at the deadline of some sort. I don't know what the market's going to look like yet for star power wide receivers, but I do wonder if they're going to try to add in some capacity to help Josh Allen and lift him up a little bit more.
You would think so, because the talent on offense is a glaring difference from what we saw with the Falcons. And speaking of the Falcons, my guy Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons, hype after this stunning win.
It was an absolute stunner for the Atlanta Falcons, pulling off the huge upset win over the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football, 24-14. This Falcon team going up 21-7 in the first half. It was one of the best first halves of football I've seen the Falcons play, probably since, their Super Bowl run type season back in 2016. Now, things did get a little hairy in the second half, and as the Falcons want to do, it looked like they were doing a little falconing to let the Bills back in the game, but they were able to seal the win in the closing minutes, and you saw Bijan Robinson have a dominant night and prove himself to be one of the top playmakers in the NFL. Drake London had a dominant night. Michael Penix sort of put himself on the map on a national spotlight, and this Falcons defense took down one of the best offenses in the NFL and kept Josh Allen in check and proved themselves that, hey, their success in the first month of the season wasn't a fluke. This defense is for real. I'm left speechless talking about how shocked I am that this team won this game. I thought they would be competitive. They absolutely floored me, and hopefully they will continue this momentum moving forward. And this team has put themselves on the map to be one of the contenders in the NFC as they try to climb their way back into NFC South contention. We'll have it covered all season long here on Locked On Falcons, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And I think if you're a Falcons fan, that's the most encouraging thing. The defense has been impressive in their best moments. I mean, just consistently getting pressure, forcing turnovers. Again, the Falcons haven't been super consistent, but when they play their good football, the defense is coming to play. And with all the young talent that they have on the defense, that has to be very encouraging.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat. I want to say it was Mina Kimes who put it out that the Falcons got a pressure rate of like 44% in this game tonight, which is like the highest in football all season this year in the NFL. So pretty impressive overall. I think that is probably the side of the ball that I had the most questions about for them coming in. And the fact that they have played well, I do think means that like the sky kind of is the limit for them. Like they will go as their talent sort of takes them. And as we saw tonight, that talent certainly won out when it came to playing this Buffalo Bills team that is considered one of the better teams in the AFC in general. That's a big win for them. It is. And I also think you can find some, Falcons fans can take some pleasure in that Michael Penix played a really efficient night, 62 completion percentage, 250 yards, had the touchdown. He nearly threw that interception at the end, but he avoided it. Like that, it was a solid night for him. The biggest questions with this team were always going to be, what's the defense going to be able to do? And is Michael Penix going to sort of develop and grow and be this quarterback that they think he can be? And you saw both those things tonight. And so, as you sort of project out what the Falcons can be, if this is more of what you're going to get, if this is the version of football that they can play, and you're going to get those two things playing to that level, they can certainly beat anybody in this league. I have no doubt about that.
And it leaves me with a big question. Is anybody in the AFC even good? And that's something that I might be talking about on Locked On NFL tomorrow with Luke Braun, the brain. But with that being said, we got another Monday night football game to go over. The Bears get their revenge over the Washington Commanders in D.C. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Built. Nobody likes paying rent, but if you must, you might as well get something for it. That's where Built comes in. Built is a game changer by turning your rent payment into real rewards that you can actually use. When you pay rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. Built isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. I love Built because when rent finally works for you, you can earn points every month on something that you're already having to pay. Whether I'm grabbing food at my favorite local restaurant or heading to the gym, I'm still earning rewards. Built has made everyday life feel more rewarding, from your neighborhood to your travel plans. Turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's JOINBILT.com/lockedonnfl, and make sure to use that link so they know that we sent you. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rougier. What do you get when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla riding a T-Rex? Confidence, pure confidence. And if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougier Go Long, because that's exactly where Rougier Go Long comes in when you want that extra confidence. It's not just another ED pill, it's a total game changer. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications and 1 dual-action formula, so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to Rougiet, that's RUGIET.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL, and make sure to use our code LOCKEDONNFL so they know that we sent you. All right, Spencer, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL, breaking down this Monday Night Football doubleheader. And, of course, we got our first coach firing of the NFL season with the Tennessee Titans letting go of Brian Callahan. And I might have a few things to say about that one, folks. Maybe just a little bit. Just a little bit. We got a great football game between the Chicago Bears and the Washington Commanders. And I do want to remind you, folks, if you go back to last year, the Chicago Bears gave up that Hail Mary at the end of the game to the Washington Commanders, and it was basically the beginning of the end for the Chicago Bears season. So for them to go in there, get a win, do it in dramatic fashion, where the defense gets some takeaways, the offense has a pretty good night, especially DeAndre Swift out there, who, man, Ben Johnson just always makes these running backs look good. It means a lot, and that's something that my guy Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears talked about after the game.
The Chicago Bears win ugly, but by God, did they find a way to win. This game against the Washington Commanders felt like it was all about the Bears' self-inflicted wounds more than anything the Washington Commanders were doing to them, with dropped passes, penalties, a blocked field goal, missed passes from Caleb Williams. And yet, after the bye week, the offensive line looks much improved. The pass rush looks improved with some more blitzing from Dennis Allen. And DeAndre Swift comes through in a major way that Bears fans have been looking for not only all season, but really dating back to last season. And it feels like Ben Johnson has this team firing in a way where they don't get fazed by the mistakes that would really drag them down in the past. And to be able to go blow for blow with a team like the Commanders that are top 10 on offense and defense and still find a way to win tells you the direction this Bears team is headed. A 3-game winning streak with a light schedule still to come. And all of a sudden, this team's going to start making some noise this season.
I agree. I had the Bears making the playoffs this year. I think they have a lot of talent. They just needed coaching. And this kind of win where they, things don't always go right. They're losing at the end. The defense makes a play. They go down. They get Jake Moody off the scrap heap from the 49ers, and he makes a kick for them in the rain and the wind. I think this is the value of coaching, and I think this Bears team is ready to kind of turn things on.
Definitely felt like you saw the impact of Ben Johnson there tonight, for sure.
Yes.
We always hear about the Chargers chargering over the years, and the Bears
right.
are kind of the same way, where they would lose those games, right? Those close
they would have
games,
lost this last year.
They'd implode somehow. And yeah, they found a way tonight, which was impressive. It does kind of feel like these two teams right now. The Commanders last year were sort of the darlings of the NFL. It kind of feels like the Bears are teetering on being that this year out of the NFC, where maybe they can be the team that makes a run. I'll also say this was the first game, and I know that Caleb Williams almost threw for 300 yards against the Cowboys, but everybody can do that. Yeah, I think if you were starting under center, Tyler, you could have thrown for 300 yards against the Cowboys because their defense is bad.
Right.
This was the first time I watched a good portion of, I was obviously flipped between the two, but I watched a good portion of this game and watched a lot of Caleb Williams, and I felt like it took a little while. I'll say that because the first half was a little ugly, but in that second half, it was the first time I felt like, okay, this is, if Caleb Williams can be this, then he's not going to be some bust. He's going to pan out. He's going to be okay. He was making some really good throws. You saw him going through his progressions late in that game. And setting his guys up and leading his weapons to sort of make the plays. That play to DeAndre Swift was a nice throw that it sort of breaks free and turns into a big chunk play because Caleb Williams was able to get him the ball in the right spot. So I felt like this was the first time where maybe this is the best way to put it. With Caleb Williams prior to this, I kind of felt like it was always a little bit of empty calories with him. Like you
Yes.
have some good plays, but it was like, like I just don't know. And I didn't know what to expect. But tonight was the first time it felt like things really started clicking for him in Ben Johnson's offense. And if that happens, then yes, this team absolutely can be a contender in the NFC. They can absolutely compete in the NFC North, which has some other good teams in it, obviously. I'm curious to see where it kind of goes from here. It can't just be this one game tonight, but certainly a big win for them to exact some revenge for what happened last year against that team.
100%. And I think that makes a good point to the Commanders of last year. They just kind of had some magic to them. They just had some juice to them that it's hard to explain or replicate. And we see that last year with the Hail Mary win. They just get things to bounce their way. Well, often in the NFL, that doesn't happen year over year. You don't see that same success and that same juice and magic year over year. And in this game, they have the fumble at the very end of the game that gives the game away to the Bears, essentially. And it's like, oh, yeah, sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way every single year. And that's something that my guy David Harrison from Locked On Commanders talked about.
They say it's not how you start, but it's how you finish. Unfortunately for the Washington Commanders in Week 6, they started and finished the exact same way, giving away possessions to the Chicago Bears, and ultimately those turnovers and the points scored off of them give the Chicago Bears exactly what they need to pull off a last-second victory over the Washington Commanders. Second straight time that this matchup, Chicago Bears versus the Washington Commanders, has finished on a last-second score, and the second straight time that the losing team is going to walk out of the stadium saying that they should have won it and that they gave it away on an unlikely play. At the end of the day, the Washington Commanders dropped to 3-3 with back-to-back road games coming up. So the road does not get any easier after giving this one away. Jaden Daniels, 2 turnovers on the day, 3 total for the Washington Commanders. For more on all of this and everything coming up for the Washington Commanders, make sure you check out the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Now, I think the Commanders will be fine next week. Next week, they play the Cowboys. It'll probably be a shootout, but I think that they can win that game. But after that, their next 3 games are at the Chiefs, Seahawks, and then Lions. That's a very tough stretch. So over the next month of games, they're going to be in a difficult position here. Again, I don't think that they're a bad football team, but with no Terry McLaurin out there, there's nobody to really make big plays in the passing game. They can run the ball with Jaden Daniels. He gets a lot of yards, but just their regular run game with their backs isn't really where it needs to be. Without that special magic that they had last year, that was just kind of a momentum factor with first-year coaches and the first-year Cliff Kingsbury's offense with Jaden Daniels, like they just aren't good enough. I think they're just I hate this term because it gets associated with bad when really it shouldn't be, but they're just a mid-football team who's competitive, but I don't really see them as someone who can contend, and I don't know that they're a lock to make the playoffs.
Yeah, listen, I do think, and this is part of the reason why the Commanders were a weird team for people to pick at the beginning of the season. I know I actually was on with you and we sort of did some of the projections of playoffs and all that here at Locked On NFL. And I was still buying into the idea that the Commanders would get better this year because I thought they made some noticeable improvements. They fixed up the offensive line a little bit. They obviously added another weapon in Deebo Samuel. I thought that they had done some things that were going to give this offense even more juice and sort of support Jaden Daniels, but it hasn't really come to fruition. Obviously, Jaden getting hurt didn't help for that stretch of games that he missed, and this was his first game back. So I would imagine as the season goes on, he'll just get better and better coming off the injury, and he'll kind of pick things up. But I think you're right. The magic just isn't there. It's kind of one of those they had such a great year last year, such a magical year last year, that they sort of regressed back to the mean, if you will, in 2025.
Yes.
And I think you're right. Because of their quarterback situation, you feel like they can compete with anybody. I think their defense is pretty good. Obviously, last year they were really bad, and I think they did address some of that in the offseason and the way that they drafted and whatnot to try to fix that group a little bit and add to it. But I just think this is probably more of what the Commanders should have been last year, and they sort of were played above their skis, and so now they'll have to sort of sort this thing out. But I don't know where they fit in this NFC right now as I kind of landscape things. I think the Bucs are obviously a really good team. I still think in their division, the Eagles are a really good team that maybe have some bad juju right now that they're going to have to sort out. We'll see what that kind of looks like. The Giants are kind of trying to sort of bounce back,
trying
a
to be frisky.
And we just talked about the Bears and what they can sort of bring to the table here. The Falcons now feel like a team that can maybe do something. The 49ers are really good. The Seahawks are still good. So there's a lot of teams that are all kind of jumbled together, I think, in both these conferences. I don't know where the Commanders kind of fit into this, but I definitely feel like something's just off from the fun, the wet and wild run that they went on last year to the NFC Championship game, if you will.
Yeah, regression to the mean is exactly what I would call it. But you look at, think about, we know the Eagles are going to be right there at the end. That's a good team. The Lions are still a good team despite their loss to Kansas City.
The Lions, yeah.
Yeah, the Rams, the 49ers are still in there. I think the Seahawks are an excellent team. I mean, the NFC is so good. We know that the Bucs are good. The Falcons just beat the Bills. It's just like there's so many decent teams. The Bears now get this win over the Commanders. There's so many good teams in the NFC that if they don't beat the Cowboys this week, things might get pretty scary pretty quickly for the Washington Commanders. But with that being said, talking about getting scary pretty quickly, things are terrifying in Tennessee, and they let go of their head coach as the first team to fire a coach. And like I said earlier, I might have a few things to say. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel, whether it's player props, over-unders, money lines, spreads, putting all that stuff together for a same-game parlay. Even if I miss kickoff and I can get it on some live betting action, it makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Once again, that's FanDuel.com. All right, Spencer, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the 2 Monday night football games. Now we got to talk about the big news in the NFL on Monday, and it was our first head coach firing of the year, and it just so happened to be the team that I cover on a daily basis. The Tennessee Titans fire Brian Callahan. Let me just say my quick spiel here. Obviously, I have hot takes, and you could go over to Locked On Titans and see exactly what I had to say in detail about this. But Brian Callahan won 4 games out of his 23 games that he coached. He had game management issues. He had in-game decision-making issues. He was hired as an offensive guru, and this football team has scored the least amount of points through the first 6 games of a season of any NFL team since 1985. I think that you could say the Titans roster is bad. They have a rookie quarterback. All of that would make it tough on a head coach to win games. Absolutely. But when you see people like Kyle Shanahan take the JV 49ers and win a game over the Rams with 3 wide receivers out, the backup tight end, couple offensive linemen out, a backup quarterback, it's just clear that coaching matters a ton, and the Titans were getting outcoached every single week. And when you lose to a team like the Raiders by double digits, the Raiders are an awful football team. They are terrible. And the Titans made them look really good. So I think it's pretty clear that if you watched the Titans whatsoever, which, hey, I wouldn't blame a lot of you folks listening right now if you told me you haven't watched the Titans, because who would subject themselves to that willingly? Brian Callahan was one of the worst head coaches I've ever seen. He's the worst head coach I've seen in the NFL since Urban Meyer. And I think while the Titans probably still aren't going to win games now because they change coaches, they're going to Mike McCoy, former Chargers head coach, as their interim head coach. It's not like the Titans are all of a sudden going to be a much better football team now that they've gotten rid of Brian Callahan. But at some point in time, when you know something isn't going to work and you know that it's not going to get better, you need to change something up. So I was totally, as someone who was excited by the hire of Brian Callahan, I am going to be the first to say it was the right move for the Titans to fire Brian Callahan. As someone on the outside looking in, Spencer, what was your reaction to that news?
Well, first of all, props to you, because I know you've been on this train for a couple weeks now as the
it's just so clear
conductor of the train. What's funny is I kind of feel like you cover the Titans regularly, I cover the Browns regularly, and I kind of feel like our teams are conjoined in that they're the 2 worst offenses in football right now. Like Kevin Stefanski has Brian Callahan to thank for not being, 32nd in actually the Browns are 32nd in well, I guess they were 32nd in points per game after yesterday, and then the Titans played, and maybe that changed.
Exactly. Yes.
But he has Brian Callahan to thank for like having the second worst EPA per game and the second worst EPA per play in the NFL right now, because the Titans offense has been equally as bad as the Browns. And so what I think is interesting is like what comes next, right? Because once that first domino falls, it's kind of like all bets are off. Like nobody wants to be the first team to fire a coach midseason. And then once somebody does it, they're like, okay, they did it, so now it's okay.
we don't look as bad.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I have been saying here in Cleveland that I don't think there's any way Kevin Stefanski gets fired midseason, because I think that I think ownership here has kind of leaned into this idea of like that he's evolved over the years. He doesn't like firing coaches midseason. So I think it would happen after the season. But what I think is interesting about this happening when it did and what lies ahead this weekend, we have a matchup. It's a who's who, Tyler. The Browns and the Dolphins are playing each other this weekend.
Oh, God. Loser leaves town.
Mike McDaniel is probably – I honestly thought Mike McDaniel was going to be the first coach fired this year.
Me too.
That Dolphins team had stuff popping up during the offseason that just made it seem like the vibes are off. Things aren't good there. So I thought for sure he was going to be the first coach fired. That doesn't happen. But that team seems checked out. You got Tua talking about how they had meetings that they weren't showing up to, and like people are then pointing the finger back at him like he's supposed to be a leader of the team. Like that team is falling apart. They are imploding on themselves. And they're playing a Browns team that has, if not the worst offense in football right now, the second worst offense in football right now. It's second
worst.
And like that team is on the brink, I think, of starting to crumble a little bit from inside. You have Myles Garrett talking after the loss of the Steelers on Sunday about how frustrated he is that they keep losing the same way. All these different things. So this game almost feels like it's a pretty important one in terms of like whoever loses, like that could be like the end, the beginning of the end for one of these coaches. Like that could be the turning point where it's like, if you're the Browns and you got this elite defense, but you can't beat that Dolphins team that is doing nothing well and is also 1-5 and like they got they're falling apart. And that, like, what does that say about you? And if you're the Dolphins, you can't beat this Browns team who are probably looking at this game like, well, this is a game we can win. What does that say about you? Like, this could be the thing that sort of sets the crumbling in motion. And so that's what I think is so interesting, because, like, I don't think Kevin Stefanski is getting fired midseason. But if he loses to the Dolphins, like, I mean, all bets are off, man. Like, I don't know, because that's why I think this game matters. So the timing of this, I think, is interesting with that matchup kind of looming large. It's like an important, unimportant matchup, I think, in the NFL, because nobody cares about the Dolphins and the Browns playing except for maybe me. But like it is going to, I think, set a tone for where these two teams kind of go from here.
No, you're 100% right. That's one of those games where both owners, which is really what matters here, the owners of the team, both owners think their team should win that game because the other team isn't good. Yeah. So whoever does is going to be very, very interesting. And I'll be honest with you, I don't even know that Mike McDaniel will make it to that game. I think we could wake up, Tuesday afternoon and Mike McDaniel could be fired on Tuesday, because a lot of owners don't fire people until Tuesday because the players are out of the building, and sometimes coaches are out of the building on Mondays after games and stuff like that. So I don't even know that Mike McDaniel will be coaching that game, but I agree, if he does make it to that game and the Browns beat the Dolphins, I think Mike McDaniel is 100% fired after that one. Kevin Stefanski, not as certain, because like you said, he's got much more pelts on the wall with Coach of the Year awards and playoff wins and stuff like that. They may let that ride out to the end of the year, but you're right. I love the way you put it. That's an important, unimportant matchup, because it has zero bearing on like the outcome of the NFL season, but it is very important to those individual teams.
Let me ask you this. Does the Titans firing their coach this week, is the juice going to be there for them to get this upset over the Patriots and Mike Vrabel? I know you had the conspiracy on that on your show.
I was on this.
Is the payoff going to be there on Sunday? Because I think that's one of the funniest storylines if it actually happens.
Listen, there is evidence to prove that if your head coach is as bad as Brian Callahan is and the winning percentage is that low, and you fire him before 8 games, there is a considerable bump in your team's performance. The data is there over the last 25 years. It's empirical. But the problem is, most coaches aren't as motivated as Mike Vrabel is going to be to go in and win that game. So, no, I do not think that the head coach bump is going to matter for the Titans this week against a very good Patriots team. But it will be a funny storyline no matter what happens, whether the Titans do get the upset or whether Mike Vrabel just stomps the Titans to remind them of what they lost out on. Either way, it's going to be some important games this weekend for those reasons. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, Spencer German. As I tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.